All right, we will go ahead and begin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah Nelson. I'm the Research Project Coordinator for the OD2A grant with Vital. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Cultural Competency Unlocked with a focus on incarcerated individuals. Today's presentation is hosted by Vital and Alabama Department of Mental Health. Please visit vital.com for resources, both for professionals and individuals in the community. Also, you can find more information about our free Connect Alabama Treatment Finder app. Virtual attendees will be muted and your video will remain off. You will use the Q&A box to ask the presenter questions during their presentation. These questions in the Q&A box will be asked at the end of the presentation. If you experience any technical issues during any session, please put a message in the chat box. We're excited today to have Warden Randall Liberty with us. Warden Liberty has a long career in both military and law enforcement, and he is currently the commissioner of the Maine Department of Corrections. He has spent over 40 years serving the public and has worked hard to improve the correctional system. A little more about Warden Liberty. Warden Liberty began his career in 1982, serving as a military policeman and later as a commander sergeant major in Iraq. In law enforcement, he has had various roles from deputy sheriff to elected sheriff of Connecticut County. Don't know if I said that right, where he served for 26 years. He was the president of the Maine Sheriff's Association and has contributed to juvenile justice initiatives. Warden Liberty is a 3-time Maine Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, holds degrees in public administration and management and leadership, and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Along with Warden Randall Liberty, please join me in welcoming his co-presenters, Director of Education, Staff Development and Training, Laura Rodas, Director of Faith and Wellness, Roberta Whitney, and Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Roy King. Without further delay, once again, we welcome Warden Liberty as he shares his insights on the importance of cultural competency within the correctional system. Warden Liberty, feel free to take it away.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm honored to be able to share the stage with my 3 colleagues that are doing some fantastic work. Would you be able to enable the PowerPoint to share?
You should see it now. Thumbs up.
Yes, there we go. Okay. As we're discussing cultural competency, I'd like to give you a bit of an overview of what's happening at the Maine Department of Corrections, our journey over the last decade or so, and where we are today and what we feel is important. Would you put our mission up, Laura? As you can see, we had a former mission statement that really talked about about the likelihood of individuals reoffending and working with them to some degree, but holding them accountable. And 4 years ago or so, we decided that that was not really the vision or direction we wanted to head. And we wanted to create our current mission statement that talks about really the objective of making our community safer. And we do that by supporting our residents, and we call them residents because language matters, and we'll talk about that a bit later. And we empower them, and we restore their lives, and we believe in dignity and respect, and we believe that that's the way we get the best outcomes. The main model of corrections, next slide please, Laura, is really grounded in humanizing individuals, creating an environment that's normalized, reducing stigma, and incentivizing opportunity. And throughout the presentation today, our discussion, we'll be talking about just exactly how we do that. When we talk about normalization, and some of you may be aware of this, or the Norway model of incarceration, where you reduce the stigma, you treat people with dignity and respect, and you provide them opportunities to be redeemed, creating a therapeutic environment. And we believe that that's the best approach to get fantastic outcomes, and we have done that. The way that success is measured in corrections often is the rate of return. How frequently does someone return to custody? In Maine, we currently have a 23% return to custody rate for adult males. For women, it's about 9%. And for those that attend college and obtain at least an associate degree, it's about 0.05%. So we recognize that programming, education, universal treatment for medication, with medication for substance use disorder, all play a critical part in having our success here in the state of Maine. Prison in Maine is much different than you may see in other parts of the state. My colleagues, other commissioners nationally, we have discussions about, what should corrections look like in the 21st century? Where have we been historically? What kind of outcomes we've received historically? 65% return to custody rates, means that 65% of the time residents are released and someone's re-victimized and they return to custody. It's very expensive. It doesn't make our communities any safer, and we feel we have a better way. And so when you look at these images, what you see are a normalized environment. The one on the left and in the central, on the bottom tier, you'll see the earned living unit. And the earned living unit is a unit that individuals reside, and they're unsupervised. There's no officer in there. There are 30 individuals there today, many of them doing significant time. As they do their time, they self-govern, and they work amongst themselves to resolve conflict, to decide the direction of the unit. This was previously a segregation unit, and any of you can look up, what that looked like if you were to Google frontline solitary nation at the Maine State Prison. You'll see that we too had a time back in 2014 where there were a lot of self-injurious behavior, a lot of extractions, flooding, a lot of very difficult times for residents and individuals who are in the cells 23 hours a day, and that resulted in very poor outcomes, as you can imagine. And so we've converted that because we no longer use it. Our restrictive housing numbers are less than 1%, and we worked in collaboration with some collective decision making with the residents to design this unit. And if you ever had an opportunity to visit, we'd love to have you. This unit has 1.5 acres of organic garden in no man's land. It has a full kitchen. Individuals there will grow about 23,000 pounds of organic garden of produce, and they cook many of their own meals. If we were to visit there today, we would they'd probably have something cooking, and it'd offer a meal as though you were entering someone's home. We have individuals that are working remotely from that site. We have service dog programs there, mission dogs that are occurring, and you'll find that it's a very normative environment. When I was touring, I think I had Arizona and Connecticut there most recently. They came into the unit, and the officers asked, where are the main officers? Why aren't they in here? And I told them there's no need, and they said, what if something pops off? What if something happens? Nothing happens in there. It's a very normative environment, a very solid pro-social culture that's created there. And these are good citizens in their community, and they do a fantastic job. You'll see in other images, normalized environment like the Veterans Pod. We're able to, in the state of Maine, we have a Veterans Pod in one of the county jails. And so if someone's arrested and they're a military veteran, they can spend time in that unit. And when they do, they can attend the Veterans Court. And if they do get state time, they can come to the Maine State Prison and reside with fellow veterans, 60 veterans in one unit. And they have shared experiences, and we can concentrate treatment services for those veterans in that one particular unit. And then we have other honor pods, as you can see, throughout our system, where people that are pro-social, are discipline-free for a period of time, are giving back to the community. They can live there. On the lower left, you'll see we have an annex, and in the annex, we have throughout our system where we have locally sourced products. The items that are allowed for sale in that unit are we discuss in collective decision making with the resident advisory councils. What would you like for products in there? How can you normalize this? What would you like to have access to? Protein powder, granola bars, locally sourced honey. What exactly are you looking for? And all the proceeds from that particular operation go back to the residents in the resident fund. We believe that, next slide, please. We believe that the importance of our vision in the Maine model of corrections, treating people with dignity and respect, treating people as though you would like to be treated, gives us a significant advantage. When people are released, they're much less likely to return because they've been treated well. Just imagine if someone has post-traumatic stress or they have some sort of trauma background, learning disability, mental health issues, does it really make sense to have a model of punishment where individuals are put down, treated poorly, and have a very negative experience in a unsafe environment in a prison system? The outcomes are obvious to me, and they have been traditionally. And so we've had some good success as we move forward. And so treating people with dignity and respect. And I've been doing this for 42 years now. I spent a lot of time on the street in law enforcement. And my vision, my views have changed in that I know that we get much better outcomes, have much safer communities when we treat people with dignity and respect and give them opportunities, give them hope, give them work, give them vocational programming. And the best transformational program we can do is education for them. I'll turn the floor over to Roy now. Your mic is off.
Sorry about that. For me, as the commissioner stated earlier, it's all about respect, building resilience, emotional intelligence, and allowing the officers to have an understanding that it starts with them. And it starts from the first day you interact with the resident. When you walk up to a resident, you have a conversation with the resident and you say, "How are you?" That's where it starts. And if you build that emotional intelligence where you say it starts with me, it spreads out to the floor. And if you look at the floors where the officers are doing these incredible jobs, the respect level is there. And we've done a really good job of teaching officers to be very mindful and interacting with residents in a powerful professional manner in building that rapport with the residents. We have these programs here that's stated here in these slides: residents, education, and technology. The residents are now having tablets. We have faith and wellness. We have a program where we have a better understanding of all the faiths, not just the Muslim religion, but all of the faiths are recognized, understood, and we're providing education to all the staff so that they can interact and have confidence when they talk to the residents. Language matters. Corrections is now catching on the fact that we are there. We want to set the tone so that the residents, when they do get out, they're going to have a positive ability to interact with folks. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I started as a correctional officer 13 years ago. I'm at my house and a former resident walks up to me and he says, "Yo, King." And I said, "Oh man, this guy knows exactly where I live." And he was there working with a contractor to do some work. I know from my own personal ability, the way I interact with residents is one day I'm going to see them out on the street. So I interact with folks in a positive, interactive, relationship building, connective way. And if we train all of our new staff to have that ability to interact with people in a professional manner, the outcomes, you can see the positive outcomes. If you look at track, as we're going to see the slides later, if you track all of things that started from 2017 to now, you'll see the trends moving in a positive direction with us incorporating a better training, a better mind, being more mindful of where you're at and so forth. Did I cover everything on this slide? I think I did.
Yep.
Roy, I would ask you this. I would ask, you've been in the Department of Corrections for a long time, and you've seen the transition from, the prison culture, and not only from the resident standpoint, but, how are we able to change that? When I spoke with Alabama and Washington, D.C. a few months ago, that's one of the things we spoke about. How do you change the heavy culture that's maybe traditional in many correctional settings to the main model, and how do you work with those entrenched sort of belief systems? What have you seen? What works?
So under the commissioner's direction, we started a program called CR2, where every single officer that comes into the department, every single prior officer that worked in the department, they went through this rigorous training of understanding where are you at, what do you need, and being mindful and having, like I said earlier, emotional intelligence. And It's a de-escalation program. It's saying when I interact with someone in a negative way, there's a piece of that I take home to my family. And you have to recognize that when you're dysregulated as an officer, that carries on to the floor. So if you understand that dysregulation, and you understand, if you have, and you're trauma informed and recognize that a lot of the residents that we're dealing with have certain trauma, and you can interact in a positive manner and bring them back down to the baseline, it makes it so that it's successful for all parties. And that's what we've done. And a lot of the old school, old officers struggled with understanding that process. And the minute you make the connection to health, mental health, emotional health, family connection, that's when they started to say, you know what? I get this. I am struggling with this. I do bring this home to my family. I do isolate. I do need to talk about this. And that is when they started to realize it's important to recognize first where you're at, connect with the residents, and make a difference so that everyone is successful.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. I think that's really important to, as we have these discussions, we talk about cultural competency and you know, the atmosphere and that you create, what kind of culture you create in the facilities. Not only does it benefit the residents, but it also benefits the staff, right? They are able to have a sustainable career. They are able to you know, go home and not carry work with them. Thank you, Roy. Roberta, I think that you're up next, maybe.
I think I'm up next, talking about resident education. So as Roy mentioned a moment ago, we have some pretty robust education offerings. And when I think about cultural competency and trying to support residents in you know, meeting their particular needs and goals, I think our education system does a supremely good job in that regard, and it's a little bit different than many education programs. So we have residents, they do need to, who, if they don't have their high SET or GED or equivalent, they need to go ahead and work on that while they're in our care, unless they're otherwise exempted. We also have robust secondary, post-secondary education. So we have 2 Pell programs where residents are able to enroll in either an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. Residents who are in 2 or more classes are allowed to have, or assigned, an individual laptop. That laptop they are able to use, you know, it's their responsibility to take good care of it and all of those things. But we have Wi-Fi throughout all of our housing units. And so residents are able to access their education no matter where they reside. If you haven't worked a lot in correctional systems, you may not know how different that is. Technology access has traditionally been seen as a very high risk security concern. But during the pandemic in particular, the commissioner had to make a decision about education and knowing the impact of education and having to decide, do we shut it all down and lose the positive benefit, or do we figure it out? He had us figure it out. And so we were able to expand access to technology using COVID dollars. And so now residents have the ability to access their classes. But what makes this even more unique is that our students are in classes with everyday college students. While we do have some live in-person education that happens at facilities, we primarily, probably about 50% of the courses that students take are done through distance education, either synchronous or asynchronous online courses. This allows them to have, you know, to interact with regular college students in a traditional way, or pretty common way, at least these days. But they also get to choose their own major, unless it's one that, for one reason or another, like vet tech, we don't have a space for us to treat, you know, animals in an FDA approved lab kind of thing, or nursing, but any course that's available through distance education. So students have the option of over 40 different programs and degree pathways. they're also able to continue in the community once released if they have not yet finished their college courses. We do monitor the access, and students who are in high SET or working on their high school diploma, they get a certain level of access. People who are in college programs get sort of broader access to the internet. And then people who are in graduate school or those who are working remotely get a larger sort of internet to be able to use. And so we do monitor it very carefully and have good controls in place. It's not that no problems ever happen, but they're fairly serious ones are fairly rare. I think only 2 or 3 in the past few years. And so what it does is it opens up a lot of autonomy and choice for residents. They can, do the degrees that are of most interest to them, that they find most connected to, and they're able to obviously move that, take that and use it in the future. And being able to access graduate school has been a huge opportunity for folks. And so that's sort of the larger framework. And if there are questions later, we'll be glad to answer them then. But I'll turn it over to Roberta as I'm mindful of time. I think I might have I had a typo. We'll go to restrictive housing.
Yeah, I'll take that. One of the things I have a question, Laura, the work that you've done and the team has done to expand internet access to the residents in education has led to the ability and for them to, many of them, to work remotely. Would you talk about the remote opportunities that have opened up that are really cutting edge and we've been able to push the envelope?
Sure. So one of the things that we found is that our first post-secondary education program started in 2006, supported by the Sunshine Lady Foundation. People earned an associate degree. Later, she funded bachelor's degrees, and then people wanted to continue their education. And when they had a lot of time remaining on sentences, it made sense to figure out ways to do that. So they were able to do that. But what also happened as part of that was that a couple of organizations approached some of our residents and said, hey, we have this project. Could we hire you to do this or that? And, they're quite confident and talented and, have a lot of gifts to add. And so they asked if that would be possible. And we considered the options and said, yes. So we have probably about 45 people who have had the opportunity to work remotely, either in sort of a contracted fellowship, internship, more temporary work assignment. And we also have a number of residents who are what we would consider regular W-2 employees. So they are on the regular payroll for the organizations for which they work. We have some software developers, we have grant managers, we have a gentleman working for Jobs for the Future. So we've got, a variety of different kinds of approaches. It's if you get a good education, right, and you want to be able to connect it to the workplace, this is a phenomenal opportunity for them. It helps people to address gaps in their resume, but it helps them to prepare for release. It changes the conversation too. Residents who are working have talked about how, they're talking with their parents or their brother or whatever about what they're doing in their work. And it's not talking about what's going on in the pod or, what was on TV. And so that's been great, but it's also afforded people really the ability to pay for things, either for, child support, because as a W-2 employee, they do pay child support taxes, and then they pay 10% that goes back to our state general fund for room and board. So they pay those and all victim services and such obligations. So that's huge and meaningful, but they're also able to do things like tithe. We have residents who donate money to harm reduction bags for people for release. And Commissioner, I don't think you know this yet, but maybe you do. We actually, one resident, I just learned this week, was able to purchase a house.
Wow, amazing. And
Yeah.
we know that in order to have successful reentry, people need to have treatment. They have to have a vocation that's a sustainable wage for them and their families, and they have to have housing. So that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
The next piece I talk about is restrictive housing. Restrictive housing is really defined nationally about, someone being in their cell, 22 hours a day. That's restrictive housing, more than 22 hours a day, getting that time out of the cell, which, I think that most of the people in the audience can recognize that having that much time in a cell is not productive, terrible outcomes. And so we went through an exercise back in 2015, 16 to ensure that it was difficult to be placed in the restrictive housing environment. And then there was a good, clear path for them to earn their way back into the community of the prison. And that's worked very, very well. People being accountable, using restorative justice and being able to circle and talk about the harms being done in a meaningful way has been very helpful to that. And this has worked well. Next slide, please. And a lot of this is a self-examination. We have to ask ourselves as leaders, as individuals managing and working on the floors every day, do we respect people? Do we view them as being valued and important? Do we see them as having their own community within the prison itself? I think that we certainly do now, and it's been a journey, as Rory alluded to. And I asked him the question about prison culture. Traditionally, and in many systems to this day, there's a culture of power and control. And rather than encouraging, coaching, mentoring, and taking that approach with individuals that need that, it becomes more of a force. It becomes more of an authoritative approach, which gets very poor outcomes. Next slide. As you can see here, we have individuals on the average daily population. We have individuals that are in 4.29 or administrative status, which means someone gets in trouble. They're put in a status for 72 hours to determine what exactly happened. Where's the best placement for them, having that conversation. Some individuals do something, misconduct, and they have to be disciplined. Only three people of all of our system are in disciplinary status at a particular time. And you can look at this data yourself, but what you'll see in the end is you'll see the statistics that indicate the work that we've been doing since 2015 has had benefits to the residents and to the employees that work in our facilities, with reduced violence, reduced assaults on staff, reduced suicidal behavior, and we're proud of the outcomes that we've had. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, much of what we do is try to normalize the environment. And as you can see in our system, there are many locations, many places that are honor pods, are normalized pods, normalized units where the individuals that are incarcerated with us, they recognize that, they know they're incarcerated. They don't need to be reminded of it. Through our speech, through our conduct. The punishment really is about being incarcerated and being separated from society and their families. We don't need to remind them of that every day. Our job and our approach really is coaching, mentoring, assisting them on their journey back, because 99% of them will be replaced back into the community, and at some point will be our neighbors. Roberta?
There's a lot being done on the wellness side and the faith or religious services side, and both of these contribute to the whole person. So if we look at dimensions of wellness, spirituality is a very important one. Research shows definitively that it supports people moving back into community with values, with a sense of purpose, with healing at different levels, and with beliefs and values that can transfer into their lives. So all of those things matter very much. And on the religious side, we're working very hard to be inclusive and to really not only serve all of the different religious traditions that we do. We serve at the Maine State Prison 18 different religious services within the DOC, and the Maine State Prison has 12 of those. Other facilities have others. So we reach out in that sense, but also the residents themselves are learning how to work with each other on differences. And the picture on the top right and the bottom right are examples of that. We had a primo experience, a special experience for Muslim residents at the Maine State Prison. for them to learn more about their faith tradition and the practices. However, attendees also included anyone interested in learning about the faith practice. And we had people who came from different faiths or no faith, who wanted to simply explore and understand, appreciate, and develop some understanding of their cellmate, of their someone in their unit, of the dietary needs, whatever it might be. So just as an example of that, people are making choices, as Laura said, just like education choices, people are making different choices and exercising their autonomy in choosing different faith practices and choosing how they want to look at spirituality and emotional growth, spiritual emotional growth. Those things become also very important, and they're making decisions in that process, which supports them individually in their growth. So I think I've hit several different things here, and I appreciate the opportunity to address any questions.
Roberta, one of the things that I really appreciate about Primo was not only did it, work with the residents that are Islamic, but it also educated all of the staff. And so all of the staff from the Maine State Prison were put through, participated in a 3-hour block of instruction on the foundational principles of Islam. And so it really, when Ramadan comes around, or call to prayer, or we talk about halal meals, why is that important to them? And I think that the staff really appreciated the expanded information, and I think there'll be much less conflict, much misunderstanding as it results to that. I also appreciated the fact that our people that are practicing the position of imam had an expanded sort of foundational enhancement. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for those pieces, because the staff element is a very important piece in terms of really building a community of understanding, and one where there's a culture of interaction, of difference, appreciation for difference, and allowing people to fully be who they are.
Yeah, we talk about cultural competency. This is a really good example of that, making sure that all of our employees and fellow residents have an appreciation for other people's faiths. And Primo really stepped up and did that.
Roberta, could you talk a little bit about interfaith councils and how those are structured?
Thank you, Laura. So our interfaith councils are drawn together at each facility, and they're drawn together with members, a representative from each of the different religions that are active in that community. And from there, they bring up issues, they discuss problems, they support one another. At the state prison, if there's an issue that one member is having, they will stand by that person to explore it, to address it, even if it's not their own interest or their own concern. They will stand with someone else to say, this matters and we want this taken care of and addressed. Those sorts of interactions that happen monthly are incredibly useful in building community among the residents, but also it expands because it expands outward in demonstrating really for our larger community, staff and other residents who may not be participating, that people are working and can live and be together. People can be fully who they are in their humanity and hold to beliefs and practices that matter, and also interact. And they work through, not only do they work through issues and problems, but they work together for fairs where they're representing each other and celebrating each other, and stand behind all kinds of things. In addition to, as I said, with Primo as an example, that anyone interested from a different religion may attend something to either support a fellow member of another faith who's presenting something or an event, or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of interaction that's supported, and the community benefits in building a cooperative and appreciative community sense. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Roberta. Really important information.
Commissioner, may I add something to that?
Please.
A couple of things that I forgot to mention, but I think under the direction of the commissioner, when all new employees come into the Department of Correction, they go through a new employee orientation. And one of the things that we started doing is we give them a really better understanding of the Muslim faith, understanding the native religion or spirituality, and they have a better understanding of Judaism. So it's a baseline so that when they come in, they have a better understanding. How do you interact? We talk about biases, prejudice, racism, implicit bias, and how do you communicate in a diverse world? And we give them the tools to understand not everyone comes from the same area, and you have to be able to interact and connect with people that look different and come from different areas. And not only do we give that to the new staff coming in, but we also give that class now to all of the residents excuse me, in the facilities, so that they can interact and connect and understand that not everyone comes from the same area. So let's understand your biases and let's have a rich conversation so that you can interact and connect with people in a better way.
Fantastic point, Roy. And you serve a critical role in that. And it's beautiful to see from the initial entry into our organization how important faith and wellness is to us, and how important dignity and respect for everyone is a foundational principle that is important. Thank you all for that.
One more point I just wanted to make. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
This guy never stops.
The other thing that we started doing here that I think was important is we started inviting featured speakers in to the organization. So we've had a native come in who was a college professor. We've had the rabbi come in and speak about understanding Judaism. We've had a Muslim leader come in and talk. We had 3 powerful Muslim women come in and talk about Muslim life from a woman's perspective. We've had a woman from Afghanistan to come in and talk about life growing up in Afghanistan and Pakistan. We had a gentleman that came from Cambodia. He came in and spoke about being a refugee. And we've had a transgender male come in and talk about his life and the transition and how we can better understand the folks that have to go through the transition of being transgender, so that we give the foundation to understand how to interact with people that might not be the same or understand as you in that manner.
Thank you, Roy. Building that cultural competency is so important. And the visiting speaker has been really critical to that, to allow people to hear and then also engage in a dialogue during that presentation and give them a perspective they may never have had. And that's been really important to grow us all as we engage in this journey to be better and do better, right? So fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm glad you made that point. In this slide, you'll see that we began on a journey over the last 8 years or so, and with the recognition that addiction is a disease, and that nationally 65 to 70% of the individuals that come into the care of a correctional setting have some form of addiction. And so 2019 there was a big push. Governor Mills came into office. She expanded Maine Care to allow an additional 130,000 people to get access to healthcare, which helped with treatment and prevention. And then that was her first executive order. Her second executive order was that all people in correctional settings were to receive treatment. And so we began that journey aggressively. And what that means is if you have a diagnosis and a prescription in the community, we honor that. If you've been self-medicating in the community and you come into our system, you meet with a clinician and it's a medical decision. It's between the patient and the clinician whether or not medication for substance use disorder would be helpful with additional treatments. And so if someone is receiving treatment, that treatment can last as long as they wish, as long as it's they and their clinician decide that it would be helpful for, to address their addiction. And then we ensure that when someone is released, they're released with a warm handoff. We work with groups Recover Together, and they receive an appointment and they meet with them before they're released. And if they are main care eligible, that's activated the moment that they're released back into the community. And there's a smooth handoff to a clinic and to a physician where they can receive treatment. As a result of universal access to medication for substance use disorder and a smooth handoff that's coordinated with the community through our caseworkers, we've had a 60% reduction in overdose deaths for those releasing back into the community. That's important to me. That's important to the team you see before you. And we believe it's a basic human right to receive that medical treatment for that disease of addiction. As is happening in Alabama and all over the world, addiction has become, the primary killer of our youth. And we thought, the governor and I and the team here believes that it's critically important to provide that treatment. As a result, we've had a significant reduction in violence in our facilities. We've had a significant reduction of people trying to smuggle illegal drugs in, because those individuals that are addicted are receiving treatment. And they no longer have to, rely on someone smuggling something in, and all the violence that is associated with that. That has worked very well for us. Those people that are in treatment can now go to school, they can work, they can focus on programming, treatment, vocational treatment, training, and family, and starting their journey to plan on, work on their case plan to transition back into the community. And that's worked very, very well. We've also been able to work through our backlog of those individuals that have Hep C. Those have all been treated, and we've caught up on that. So anyone arriving receive treatment, and that does not linger. This is something that's happening nationally. There's a lot of discussion about universal treatment for addiction. And when I spoke to in DC to some of the folks from Alabama, we had discussions about the journey and how we get there and how do we, transition from a mindset of, an addict as opposed to somebody that has an addiction, right? That's not who they are. It's they have a disease. And how do we make our community safer by providing treatment and normalizing that and allowing them the opportunity to be well as they deserve. Next slide, please. One of the things.
Oh, may I just add one more thing? One of the other changes that we've made throughout the years is instead of sort of segregating different forms of treatment, like intensive outpatient, or an inpatient program in specific facilities, requiring that people move from one place to another to access treatment or treatment for problematic sexual behavior. We have now made treatment available across the system, which allows people to stay in the facility perhaps it's closest to their home, where they can have more visits with their family, or can continue to participate in other important programs or education where they're at. And so instead of having it be place bound and moving people based on you need this treatment, so we're going to put you here, it's making it universally available, and that leads to good outcomes, especially for folks who have lots of positive connections with those in their facility, and want to be able to access, sometimes it's voluntary, they want additional care, certainly. And so making it available has been an important piece for them.
Wonderful. The last two things we want to talk about are really our farm to table and the work that we're doing there and why it's important. And then I want to show you the results. I'll show you the data that all of this work combined, the main model is the umbrella of all these programs that are happening simultaneously, and the really good outcomes that we're achieving as a result of it. The agriculture and farm to table and culinary arts program are really important to us because, we believe that having a good meal, having good nutrition is a basic human right. And traditionally, food that's provided in correctional settings is processed. It's convenient, it's fast, it's high sodium, it's high carbs, it's highly processed foods. And so we've gotten away from that, and we do a lot of scratch cooking. We raise much of our produce, and it's organically grown. We have collaborated with the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, and we have 90 Master Gardener certified residents that tend these crops that are often inside the fence in no man's land or along the runway. And that's gone very, very well. I suspect this year we'll do more than 300,000 pounds of organically grown produce that can provide an endless salad bar. Think about that, endless salad bar, where they can come up and take as much salad as they wish, where someone can nurture a seed into a seedling and grow heirloom tomatoes that maybe their grandparents grew for them when they were children, and have these tastes, textures, flavors that they haven't tasted in years. And so that's really important to us. We also find that when we do locally sourced and organically grown food that we source from local agricultural farms, that we're able to provide meals that are often less expensive. The Mountain View Correctional Facility currently provides meals at 66 cents a meal. So it makes fiscal sense to locally source food. It makes fiscally sense to grow your own. It makes nutritional sense to be able to pick a tomato this morning and then have it on your food tray for lunch. This all makes sense. It improves morale. It can reduce cost. It recycles tax dollars back into the community. Those tax dollars go back to the agricultural community, and that's very helpful to them. And so it makes sense all the way around. It also creates an environment where you see inside the facilities and outside the facilities where lush gardens are growing, flowers are growing. We have a total of 16 beehives in our system, and we have 85 beekeepers that are tending the fields, and the crops are being pollinated, and it makes good fiscal sense for everyone. And it's really taken off in the last couple of years, and I would encourage any system, Alabama certainly, if you can grow things inside your facilities or outside facilities, do that. It also feeds into our culinary arts program, where Laura mentioned earlier. We just came back from an event, from Farm to Table event, where we had a combination of our agricultural folks and our culinary arts teams producing a wonderful meal for the staff. And it was just really amazing to see the pride and the skill that they have during this event.
And both of those programs, both the agriculture and the culinary arts, are registered apprenticeships. And so people are both earning dollars and experience, but at the end of their program, they also have a credential of value. And so some people do it because they, enjoy the growing, but some people do it because they enjoy the growing so much or the cooking so much that they want it to be their career. And so this is a nice pathway for them to be able to do that, and to also do something enjoyable while they're in our care and help provide nutritious and very delicious food. The middle picture there is a chicken curry that served the entire community. And gosh, I wish I had been able to stay for lunch that day because it smelled so good. So lots of good things going on in the agriculture and nutrition world.
And one great story, the Earned Living Unit has, as I mentioned, an 1.5 acre organic garden. This year, they were able to grow enough strawberries so that they were able to produce enough strawberries for the entire residents in the Maine State Prison, so they could have strawberry shortcake on the 4th of July. What a great community sort of effort and opportunity for them to have the normalized 4th of July meal. It was just fantastic. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I want to show you some of the statistics that have done very, very are indicative of the work that we're doing. This is the chart on assault of client on client. And you can see that when you look at the numbers to the left, the numbers can be skewed by 1 or 2 assaults because the numbers are so low. If you look, it looks like in 2024, we had an average of, with 1,800 residents, we only had 9 assaults on resident. So very good there. Next stat, assaults on staff. When we talk to the staff about Maine Model of Corrections and having a more dignified, humanized, destigmatizing environment, it obviously, when you look at this chart, it's a much, much safer environment. So the staff benefits by having a safe environment to work in and having a sustainable career. So really benefits all. Physical restraint, the necessity for us to handcuff, put somebody in a restraint chair, or to lock them down for prolonged periods of time have significantly dropped. If you look from 2020, the significant drop to 2024. We're very proud of this. The ability to coach, mentor, and encourage good pro-social behavior has worked.
Can I add something here, Commissioner?
Yes.
I think training officers to say, I'm here to help. I'm here to allow you to understand that I am not here to hurt you. We can get through this together. And that's the first step versus saying, get over it or don't come to prison, has made a huge difference. And traditionally, I think if you look at a lot of the way a lot of prisons were trained historically, and that's what they got. Get over it. Don't come to prison. I don't care. Simply saying, I'm here to help. We're going to get through this together. It's a team, has made a huge difference.
That's a Roy King specialty. He's been doing that for years. It's nice to see you to be able to spread that word. If we look at this one, self-inflicted injury, people harming themselves, people cutting themselves, people, doing things that are self-injurious, significant reduction there. And I attribute that to, they have hope. They have people that care about them, truly care about them. As Roy said, I'm here to help you. How can we resolve this, right? Rather than I don't care, don't come to prison. And so that's been significantly, because it's really traumatic to see someone harm themselves in a meaningful way. It's difficult for staff. It's difficult, for wellness overall. And so creating a healthy environment that's pro-social has been fantastic. And this is the last slide. And we look at return to custody rates. The rate at which someone is released and they're back within 3 years. These numbers from 2018 on tell the story. Has been absolutely fantastic to see people be successful in the community, released there with the skills that allow them to be successful, pro-social, and not return to us. And so that's what we have for prepared presentation. We have a few minutes here that we set aside for any questions that you may have for us, and we welcome them. Any questions?
I do see one in the chat that Ashley had put. One of the things that we see in Alabama prisons is severe understaffing of officers, social services, and more. How would you describe officer staff levels in Maine prisons or the prison featured in this PowerPoint? How about social services staff?
I'm glad that you asked. So as a result of the work that we're doing in creating a pro-social environment for both staff and residents, currently at the Maine Correctional Center, we have an 8% vacancy rate, just 8%. At Charleston Correctional Facility, the Mountain View, we have a 5% vacancy rate, just 5%. At the Maine State Prison, it's 12%. And at the Down East Correctional Facility, we are fully staffed. So having an environment where people enjoy coming to work and feel like they're truly giving back to the community by making it safer and helping people heal, redeem themselves is meaningful and important to them. And so we feel as though we're providing that system. And if people truly care about the residents they're working with, they want to come to work.
Thank you. Another question. So for correctional institutions that have not yet considered some of these new approaches, what steps would you recommend they take to begin walking down their own path?
Others? Roy, Roberta, Laura, have anything you would like to add?
I would say a key point, I oversee both resident education and also staff development and training. And I would say that it's important to train people differently from the start. Roy's talked a little bit about that. I absolutely concur. If you've never been through correctional training, often it is not designed in a way that's particularly effective in terms of it's more of sage on the stage and more focused on security, and may not be as focused on de-escalation or people understanding ACEs or things along those lines. And it's also not necessarily developed for the adult learner. And so changing both the attitudes and language pieces, but also trying to create training that is really building skills, helping people to develop and to develop those practices that you want and be able to do them in the workplace when they get there. That's really the goal. And you know, retraining anybody on new practices is also important, but taking a look at initial training curriculum and making sure that it aligns with the values of the organization is really essential, because, you know, we have a lot of different people coming into the workforce today. We need to make sure that we're meeting their needs and that we're really framing the work in such a way that folks understand you need to come from a place of your everyday work aligning with your values overall.
And I guess I would just say that to me, the work that we do is healing and growth in different ways. And how do we bring that to people in terms of all the dimensions of a human being? So we work a lot with all the dimensions of wellness. And within that, the other piece to me, and Roy, I think you'd back me up on this, and Laura probably too, Commissioner, is the human element. You know, we are meeting each other first and foremost as fellow human beings.
It looks like there's 3 questions, 3 or 4 in the chat when it comes to medication management.
Yeah, I saw that. And so it sounds like we have some correctional folks that are in the room, and I come from a security background also. As was mentioned, I was a warden before I was commissioner. I was also elected sheriff, so I'm very conscious about security and you know, the illicit entrance of drugs in the system. I saw one question about cheeking. Do you see less cheeking occurring or more? And so what we see is we see less, and we've gone even further. We have a normalized medication line. So we started with having people with Suboxone sitting on a bench. They put it under their tongue. We wait 5 minutes. They eat a cracker. They drink 2 cups of water, and then they walk. And so we've evolved to a point where it's a normalized med line, destigmatizing addiction. They go to the med line like everyone else. The strip is placed under their tongue. The nurse sees it's placed under their tongue, and they walk off. Those people, there isn't much of a market now for illicit drugs, because those that desire and being treated for addiction, they receive treatment. And so that market the bottom has fallen out. We see much less, you know, lugging by staff. Don't see any. We have much less, you know, illicit entry of drugs as a result, because the market isn't there. Does it happen on occasion? Sure. Do we have to check mail frequently? Yes, always. We have to do those things that are still security conscious, checking legal mail, making sure, you know, we still photocopy mail and give them a copy in front of them. We do a lot of that work. We do all the protocols you probably do also. But once people's addiction is treated, there's very little market for it.
Kind of going on that, I saw Shannon mention a question in the chat as well. Have you seen a decrease in contraband that comes in since implementing your new program?
Yes, we've seen a decrease because the market isn't there. And so if people are addicted and their addiction isn't being treated, they wish to have, you know, medication for that. And, but if they're on Suboxone and they're being pro-social and they're engaged in college and they're working and they're doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, like they're supposed to be in the community, they've gotten away from that. And that's been our experience. We also were suspicious. We were also cautious about providing Suboxone. We were also cautious about, you know, cheeking and people lugging, but that hasn't been the case. Since we've been treating people, the bottom falls out of the market.
Another question from Debbie in the chat. Any specific training to equip correctional officers and staff to be more person-centered and pro-social environment focused?
So if you'd like to connect with me directly, I'm glad to share resources. As Roy mentioned, we have CR2. We also train staff in the basics of motivational interviewing. We have in our academy a 16-hour interpersonal communications course that also covers ACEs and all of those sorts of things. And it is accompanied by 24 hours of scenario-based interpersonal communication practice as well. So we're glad to share any and all of those things. We also have online trainings on things like language matters, also language matters too, on faith and spirituality and DEI. So we've got a couple of those things that we'd be glad to share, and they really help to center people around the idea of treating people as people. I was at a conference last week, and a person who's been working in the field and is just a pillar in the field for 4 decades said something that I found to be quite correct. And it was Andy Moss, who is from the Moss Group. And she said, I think I've been saying for 40 years, we could change corrections if we could just learn to speak to each other differently. And so the more focus and attention on interpersonal communication, and as Roy said, social emotional intelligence. And we're working on developing additional higher level training for leaders and emerging leaders, frontline supervisors, both so that they understand their role in the culture change, but also how they can be servant leaders, because that is what public service is. And that's what we're called to do. And the impact we have can be very powerful, especially if we do it well.
Well said.
If there's any specific questions that you want us to reach out to us personally, feel free to send an email to us. Hopefully, Leah, you have our email addresses. If not, you can grab it from Laura. You can feel free to reach out and ask us questions.
Yes, we do have your contacts, and we'll put that in the chat.
Perfect.
All right. If anyone has any other questions, I could put that in the chat now. All right. So thank you again to Warden Liberty and his team for their time and expertise, and all of you for joining today's important conversation. As we continue to strive for cultural competency in all aspects of our work, it is vital to keep these conversations going. I encourage you all to take today's learnings back to your organizations and communities. Once we confirm attendance, you'll be emailed a link to complete the evaluation. Please complete the evaluation by close of business on Monday, September 23rd. Once you complete the evaluation, please allow for 2 weeks to receive your certificate or contact verification form. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at the next Cultural Competency Unlocked webinar on October 16th with a focus on pregnant women. If you haven't already, please visit vitalalabama.com to register, and have a great day. Thank you.